that learning and education are one of the pillars of any society. And many of us, and I include myself in this, can point to a teacher or teachers who had a pivotal influence on us as we were pointed in certain directions in our life's journey. The teachers don't want to go on strike, but that's what's going to happen tomorrow, and there'll be great disruption for students, particularly for their families and for the teachers themselves. And at the core of this, as you have just teased out, is the reform of the junior cycle. And it's reduced down to the key issue of teachers assessing their own students for certification purposes. Now Sinn Féin, broadly speaking, supports all of the progressive reforms and proposals that the government have brought forward, except for that one issue of assessment. Because it does make sense that assessment should be impartial, should be external, should be fair, and should be standardised. So that's where we're at. And the Minister has conceded that principle by saying that teachers don't have to assess 60% of their students' work. But while we're in this bind, she's insisting, in other words, she's imposing a veto that teachers must assess 40% of their students' work. So we agree, Sinn Féin agrees with the Minister's strategy of moving away from rote learning, but the intransigence on this issue has made the strike inevitable. And you yourself know there has to be agreement. I mean, teachers are just fundamental to how we progress. If they don't embrace this, then the whole thing becomes a series of increasing disruptions, especially for the young people involved. So could I ask you again just to review what you have said? And we have a PMB in this issue, and we have asked the Minister to review what she is doing and to return to the negotiating table, postpone further implementation of the junior cycle reform, and seek a reasonable, agreed, not an imposition, but an agreed resolution of this important issue.
Thank you.
I share Deputy Adams's view that the importance and the influence of strong leadership from teachers has an incredible impact on many young minds, and is so important in the quality and the attractiveness of Irish students for what they do. And teaching's got a really important impact on that. But this is not a case of the Minister imposing by diktat or will something that's been considered, where compromise has been brought about, where she has engaged and listened very carefully to what teachers have had to say. Now, it's not a case, speaking to somebody from another country recently, where they've changed the entire structure of examinations to where they're corrected because boxes are ticked by computer. You can't do that with an essay. You can't do that in the structure that we have here. The Minister has changed it now to where a 40% assessment takes place in respect of students. Teachers know their students better than anybody else, and they're professionals. This is a professional job. As you know, assessment of teachers is 100% on a whole range of things in many other countries. What's being asked here of teachers is to assess 40% in respect of the work that their pupils do. Training element that's in there in how that can be brought about is very real and very important, so that teachers can do a professional job in respect of their students. So, as I say, the strike is avoidable and can be called off today. It's not the students who call the strike. It's not the parents who call the strike. It's not the Minister who called the strike. It's the teachers. And the proposals on the table, Deputy Adams, as you're aware, are a consequence now of Minister O'Sullivan having engaged, having listened, and having said, I think this is very reasonable, and I would ask that you would go ahead with it. So again, let me appeal from the Dáil here that as the Minister is always willing to engage and to listen with the teacher groups and the teacher unions, that this strike can be called off today. The students who were upstairs just a few minutes ago don't want a strike to take place at this time. And for exam students, preparing is very important. Teachers are a professional body. They're professional people. They do a professional job. And an element of assessment of their own pupils is nothing that they cannot conduct with credibility and competency.
Deputy Adams.
why are you taking such a hard-line stance, Taoiseach, on this? I mean, the teachers are the professionals, so they're the folks who know. The bind that we're in is that the Minister's going to end up sitting down with the teachers. I mean, that's what's going to happen. They're going to return to the negotiating table. This issue, in all likelihood, will be resolved at some point. But you're right, the teachers are the professionals, so we should listen to what they're saying. And the implication of your answer is that in some way they don't want the extra work. And that isn't the case. The concern, I mean, one of the concerns I have, that funding and training for the proposed changes haven't been made. Now, we still stand on the principle that assessment should be external and standardised and so on and so forth, but teachers of English are now required to implement the framework for junior cycle English specification, received only 1 day in service training. And, you know, we shouldn't take lightly the fact that 730 schools are going to be closed tomorrow. And you see, the principal responsibility lies with the government to find the resolution to these difficulties. The teachers have reiterated their support for a first-class junior cycle for all students, including a move away from a reliance on final written examinations and the promotion of different types of assessment, including more practical project and portfolio work. So teachers are about being innovative about how they do their job. And it's not enough to say the government didn't call the strike. Sure, we know that. It's not good enough to say the students didn't call the strike. We know that as well. The fact is that this comes down to the government digging in on a position which I don't know the basis of it, that teachers have to assess 40% of their students' work. Now, surely that's bridgeable. Surely that should be sorted out. And I ask you again to review your current stance. For the Minister to return now. Try to avert the strike tomorrow. Talk to the unions this evening, this afternoon, tonight, and listen to their fears and concerns. And not just listen, but deliver upon what they're saying to you.
Yeah, well, it's not a hardline stance, Deputy Adams. Everybody accepts that there's a need for change in the structure of the junior certificate examination. And there have been quite a number of propositions put on the table over the years as to how that might happen. There's an evolution of change here for the junior certificate. And the proposition on the table follows the Minister having listened very carefully to the teacher unions. Now, if the teacher unions decide to call off the strike today, make that announcement today, I'm quite sure that Minister O'Sullivan is willing to engage with them again if there's an element of difference or something else that they wish to put on the table here. But you've got to change the structure of a deputy. You've made the point yourself, and I agree with you, that the responsibility here doesn't just lie with the government. There is a need to change this. You recognise that. It can't be changed without the cooperation and the willingness and the support of the teacher professionals. And what was on the table was an original proposition from the former Minister Quinn that's changed now by Minister O'Sullivan, having engaged with the teachers. These are young people. They're doing their junior certificate examination. It's a system that's got to change. And 40% assessment of the work of a junior certificate pupil is not beyond the professional competency of any teacher. And while change is oftentimes difficult to accept, what we're doing here is trying to provide the very best level of, if you like, first examination process for students moving through secondary school. And Minister O'Sullivan has spent hours, and her people have spent hours engaging with the unions and the teachers about this change. This is a very progressive step in the right direction, so that the integrity and the quality and the range and the structure of that examination will be what we all want it to be, one that caters for the individual talents and competencies and levels of ability of students going through the junior certificate. So if the unions decide today to issue a statement saying this strike is off, that I'm sure will be welcomed by Minister O'Sullivan, welcomed by the many thousands of parents, welcomed by the students, in particular those who are doing examinations. And obviously, Minister, as she said on many occasions, is more than willing to continue to work and to engage with teacher unions. So I'd ask that actually might happen. And as you say, at the end of the day, this position will be resolved. Ministers put a compromise on the table that is very reasonable and that should be accepted.
Deputy Tom Fleming.